Please bear with me. It's my baby. Another thing that the Dreamcast did before any other console, really before it, truly nailed, was the PC conversion. There were a number of games that were specific to the PC before the Dreamcast came out that simply couldn't be done to the same degree, to any real couldn't be done any real justice on consoles. Yes, you had Diablo, which came out on the PlayStation. Yes, you had Quake 1 and 2, N64 and PlayStation, but these were reworkings, good reworkings, but reworkings nonetheless. When Quake 3 hit for the Dreamcast, I remember very specifically being very proud of my Dreamcast, calling in a lot of my PC fanboys, because you'll recall, all the way specifically through the 90s, you're dealing with a lot of console gamer versus PC gamer conflict. Fun stuff. Good time. So it wasn't just, I'm a fanboy of this manufacturer. Oh, I'm a fanboy of this manufacturer. No, it was a total split of ideals with console and PC gamers that persists today, though to a much lesser extent, because people have realized that the plug-and-play value of consoles makes them, worth converting solid PC ports. We have different attention spans, and we look for different details in our games, we console gamers. But there will be a home for your PC favorite in the coming future on consoles, I assure you. You can't beat the plug and play. The immediacy and ease can't be denied. So yes, Quake 3 really legitimized, I think, what consoles could do with PC properties. How are you?
It's a huge tree.
It is. I'm enjoying it. Yeah. What made the Dreamcast so magical was that it wasn't just a game console produced by a then famous console manufacturer. It was the swan song. And anyone who knew Sega's history at the time, that is to say the Saturn, the 32X, the Mega Drive, and the Master System in that reverse order, anyone who knew the company's history knew that the Dreamcast was their make-it-or-break-it console, home console, much in the way that the Wii was, I believe, for Nintendo, this generation. And as a result, Sega really pulled together, and in my opinion, well, for me what is very clear is that the Dreamcast era was Sega at its most Sega. The degree of creativity and quality that Sega produced on that console was ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. I haven't seen software that ambitious released since. There are some really ambitious games going on. GTA 4 is ambitious in its own way. Well, absolutely. It's in my opinion. Grand Theft Auto 4, quick aside, Grand Theft Auto 4 is the most ambitious video game ever made. And that will, of course, evolve. I mean, it's the beginning of the era of crazy, redonkulous, ambitious video games. So, yes, there is a lot to be said for that. But when you look at games like Jet Grind Radio, Space Channel 5, to a lesser extent, but Jet Grind Radio, absolutely, Shenmue, Quake 3 was extremely ambitious. There are a number of these games that just knocked socks off. Very few people paid attention, but I'm not upset anymore. Also, it's important to note that in terms of video game culture, this is the Dreamcast was really kind of spearheaded by Mr. Peter Moore, who later went to Xbox or Microsoft for the Xbox One and 360's launch, and now is president of EA Sports. The man's on it. I mean, the man is on it, and I think he did a fantastic job steering the Dreamcast. And I think it's great. I think it's very good for him. I'm glad for him that we gamers who missed out, I'm including myself to some extent, though I'm only doing that to be nice, frankly. Anyway, we're getting back to appreciating what he was in charge of at the time. Greg Thomas over at Visual Concepts, actually, from what I read once, okayed every game to come through the system. And he did a great job. He did a fantastic job. And the Naomi board, which ran all the games, also ran their arcade, so you had, like I said, you had games that were better than their arcade counterparts. And they were, at the very least, as good. I mean, Crazy Taxi, you cannot, just incredible stuff that really changed the way we view the arcade, and it's reflected in our present tense, you know? Who goes to the arcade anymore? What's the purpose of the arcade anymore? I don't even know. I'd love to go to the arcade and have it matter, have it be worth it, but at $1 a pop, I'd rather just save up and get my 50 tries by dropping the cash all at once at the game shop. Anyway, and in terms of 2008 eyes, I think it's very important that when the Dreamcast catalog becomes available to us all via download, which it inevitably will, not sure by what method, but you know you're going to be playing a Dreamcast pack of games at some point. It's important that you look at these games, though they've all held up, and well, most have held up in a very respectable way graphically. It's important that you recognize that, you know, this was the console that really started with the triggers. Yes, the 3D pad for Knights on the Sega Saturn used it, but really it came to the fore in the Dreamcast. People argue left and right with about the Dreamcast pad. Most people argue that it's a horrible controller. I think it's perfect, but well, close. It's missing 2 buttons. I want 6 buttons on the face because Capcom was a huge supporter. So if you had the first Marvel vs. Capcom and you just had a Dreamcast pad, you were kind of hurting. It didn't really respond very well to the triggers for digital input because they're not digital. Now, of course, what's interesting about the Dreamcast pad is that Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is now seen as a legend, which people actually often don't realize was released for the Dreamcast, and was so Dreamcast specific that in Japan, if you wanted to get the full roster of characters, unlockable characters, you actually would take your VMU, that's right, your Dreamcast memory card that plugged into your controller, you would take it into the arcade, play it, unlock characters, bring it home, plug it into your console, and that's how your console version would actually acquire all of the characters available to you as the player. It was a symbiotic relationship. These kinds of things are lost, unfortunately, in time, and it's very sad and unfortunate. Hopefully, when it's re-released, we'll be getting the Dreamcast version and its relationship to the arcade, the dwindling at the time arcade, will be included. Because people, I'm doing this because the culture of video games is not really, it's evolving so quickly. I don't think it's being accurately retained. I'm not saying that I'm an historian. I'd love to be, but I'm not. I'm an enthusiast. You know, I'm a connoisseur of sorts, and so I love this stuff and I keep track by myself. But you know, memories get clouded. So you know, when you look into retro games in general, specifically with the Dreamcast, consider what was going on in 1999. And when you do get into the Dreamcast, I also suggest you consider why you weren't into it. Why you, as a hardcore gamer, didn't give the Dreamcast a chance. Consider that. And no shame in the game. What's done is done. But consider that it wasn't the machine. And if it was, give it a chance. You know, don't just claim it was the machine and that's why you never bought it. Frankly, if you don't like that machine, I doubt you've really played it. Or played anything good on it. Because it does, like I say, have some bad stuff. So, in 2008, future people eyes, the Dreamcast, I believe, holds up beautifully. And, just real quick, and I will end on this, Ferrari F355 for the Dreamcast is the best simulation racer I've ever played. I was just playing Forza Motorsport 2. I don't know. I'll take Ferrari. I'm not even a car guy. There are so many... I could spend a while talking about that game. Do check it out. And please, Xbox Live. Sega, give that to Xbox Live soon. Also, in terms of the controller, take a look down at your Xbox 360 pad and then compare it to the Dreamcast pad. Just put them neck and neck. See if you come away with any conclusions. I think it's a thumbs up on Microsoft's part. I love my 360 and I consider it Dreamcast 2. Rather 3, because the Xbox One was actually very Dreamcast inspired, obviously. And Sega's support with Dreamcast sequels, Jet Grind Radio or Jet Set Radio Future, as well as some games that were going to be on the Dreamcast in the first place, Toe Jam and Earl 3, as well as the big one for me would be Gun Valkyrie. These games were Dreamcast games, and they got ported to the Xbox, and I think that was a good move for Sega. I wasn't too upset about it, though I was a little upset about Super Monkey Ball going to the GameCube exclusively. I believe that should have been the final release on the Sega Dreamcast, because the Dreamcast could easily handle that, and I think that would have been a beautiful swan song.